Thank you very much. I think people are going to be walking in, which is excellent, because this is a session that we really don't want to miss. In order to solve some of the most pressing problems within our communities and meet ambitious smart city goals, utilities are going to have to reimagine how they participate. And I'm very excited to welcome Ali Mohammed, who is the Innovation and Digital Transformation Executive at the New York Power Authority, on stage to talk about this with us and some of the strategies that they're doing in order to address these things. Yes, please. Some energy would be fabulous. Oh, here. That's yours. Okay, I think we figured that out. Okay, so again, I'm going to ask what I always ask because I'm really curious for everyone to know. What makes you so passionate about the work that you do?
Thank you everyone, and thank you, Joyce, for having me here. So technology goes way back for me. Always growing up, my dad was a technologist, so I got the inspiration from him. Anytime a new technology used to come out, he used to challenge me. He used to ask me to read about it and say, how does it apply to any sector? So we used to go back and forth on conversations. Even when I moved to the US, we used to always have our weekly conversations on technology and used to keep up on everything. He used to send me LinkedIn articles, he used to send me anything he could find. So I be motivated as well as keep up with what's going on in the industry, and that's how I started to get more involved in. I started working in the utility sector right after graduation. So I know how the plants operate, I know how the substations operate, so adding the technology layer to it. So from an operational side, putting in strategy to it is where it got me today to where I am as the innovation lead.
That's amazing. Thank you. And for some context, then, like, how does that work apply to smart cities?
Smart city is more of a hobby for me. So it started off as a hobby. I doing a lot of research. There's a lot of technology, cool technology out there that we can apply and help the New York residents. And that's how, especially at NYPA, when we first started looking at smart city technology, there's a lot of challenges that utilities have to go through. One is getting prioritization on the investments. So asking for a huge capital investment is always a challenge when you're talking and comparing about maintaining your assets, both generation, transmission, and distribution assets. So for us, NYPA is the largest state-owned utility. So from a legislative perspective, we don't have legislation to just deploy any technology out there, as long as it is related to energy. So when I started looking at the smart cities, I asked my team to create a framework where we look at and split into two different groups. One that's clearly energy related, there's no gray area, some things that we can do. And we started off with upgrading the street lights. So we went from a regular street lights to LED street lights, but there are two ports on the lamps. So now you can actually put in sensors, plug and play sensors to collect more information. So we have installed, I think, over 500,000 streetlights across 5 major cities to date. And the second component was something that's in the gray area, where the public will definitely benefit from it, but we might not have the jurisdiction. So now at this point, that could be Wi-Fi, it could be anything that related to the public sector, but something that we haven't figured out yet from a legislation standpoint, but we're still embarking on putting a framework together on how we can help our customers. And NYPA customers are municipalities and co-ops. That's where we partner with to deploy the technology out. So we're still evaluating the component for that, and hopefully soon we'll be able to figure a way out to help all the counties and the towns in New York.
That's really great, and lots of impact to the work that you're doing. And we'll get into some more of that here later on. And you've already started touching on this a little bit, but how do you see the utilities role shifting? Not just NYPA, but like how do you see utilities in general sort of shifting towards stuff in smart cities? And can you explain a little bit further about what drives that?
So I think it's the first thing is the culture, right? So look at digital transformation, look at any transformation that happens in an organization, especially in utilities. Technology is evolving at a rapid pace. Utilities, especially IOUs and some of the large-scale utilities, have the manpower and the resources to evaluate these technologies and ensuring that, whether it's applicable or not. Some of the towns and counties that we work with, they are skeleton crews. They do not have the resource. So NYPA embarked on this journey to become their trusted energy advisor, where we will test the technologies and help them put a plan together so they can deploy these technologies out in their field. And we might even help with program management, project management, whatever support that they would need to accomplish those goals. So that's how our journey started off with looking at smart cities. And one of the So there's two aspects to it. One is just implementation, we walk away, but what about the maintenance of it? So when we started installing the street lights, we wanted to make sure that they have enough capacity to maintain them going forward too. So NYPA, on the other hand, started working on putting an O&M plan, the operations and maintenance plan, for the towns and the counties, so they have a robust plan to maintain these assets going forward.
That's really, awesome. Because when you think about utilities, kind of traditionally, they're kind of risk averse, and this sounds sort of like, we'll take on the risk, we'll test these technologies, we'll help you figure out how to implement them, and not just implement them, but maintain them going forward. That's a big shift. And I mean, do you think that NYPA has an opportunity to do more of that because it is a state power authority, or is the structure something that makes it more prone to this kind of innovation?
I mean, innovation happens in every organization, no matter what. I mean, NYPA is at the forefront on some of this. There are other areas where other utilities are at the forefront. So it's about sharing what you learn, sharing with your customers, sharing with your peers. But definitely, NYPA is in a unique position. One being the state, being part of the state. The second is having the right leadership as well. So them betting on innovation, making sure that technology is, like I said, is moving at a rapid pace. Can we keep up with that technology evolution? How much can we invest in? What are the prioritized areas that we need to invest in? Those are the questions that the executives need to look at and answer, so you have a prioritized portfolio. I mean, you can do a lot. We have, I have an R&D section that works on hundreds of projects every year. But now we're looking at streamlining and said, okay, we have CLCPA goals, for Climate Protection Act, where we have to meet 70% renewables coming into to New York by 2030. Then by 2040 and 2050, you have the net zero goals. So how can we achieve these, right? So, previous CEO embarked on a journey called Agile, which is the Advanced Grid Innovation Lab for Energy. It's an acronym. So what we built is a real-time simulation model of our transmission grid, and we don't have distribution, so we have the aggregated load from a distribution standpoint, as well as all of our generation is built in there. So now we can go in and test these technologies in a lab environment before we roll these out into the field. So now you're adding that protection of the layer there. So now everyone feels comfortable with something going out, because now with especially prone to cyber attacks and stuff, so we have to make sure that these technologies have been tested thoroughly within a lab environment. So it's about the leadership, I would say, making sure that we are putting the money in the right direction and putting the money in the right technology.
Thank you. And I mean, you said that you have hundreds of projects in a portfolio that you guys look at, and you've mentioned two or three of them already, but I know that's not all that you do. So, what are some of the projects that you're working on right now that you're like most excited about?
So I talked about the Agile Lab, which was actually born out of R&D. It was a concept. It actually is a full-blown lab today. In 2023, we're actually looking to develop and expand that capability to a digital twin, looking to be the first utility to build that. So it's a real-time simulation, of the digital twin simulation, that we can do time series analysis of what happens if we invest in technology today. Can this help us meet our goals for 2030? And 5 years down the road, you can actually go back and see, did we make the right decisions, because policies change, different things happen. You learn a lot when, after deploying some of the technologies. You can actually go back and test and make sure that those are the right decisions you have made. If not, you can do analysis on saying, where can we pivot to make sure we are on track with our goals. That's one. The second one in R&D, I mean, there's a lot. So one, from a transmission standpoint, looking at how can we optimize, our transmission assets today with increasing capacity. There's some projects there on with respect to some sensors. There's more on, especially on the battery storage. I think that's definitely one that we're working. There's two projects currently in flight, looking at least 8 to 10 hour battery storage projects that we're doing. EVs is a big, there's a lot of conversations yesterday and today about EV integration. So now NYPA took the lead in New York to help with the range anxiety. So we started deploying DC fast chargers across the state. And now we're looking at ultra fast chargers and looking at boosters for these chargers too. So you can have a level 2 charger where you can put a little push to it from the back end, and you can have a fast charger right at your place. So we're looking at different technologies today. How many of these will pan out, we don't know, but this all in R&D today. So hopefully, there's definitely some of these technologies I talked about is definitely help us kind of get to our 2030 goals.
That's amazing. I love how much you guys are doing and all of the innovative efforts that you're putting forth. I mean, it's great that you have, that not all of this might work. That's kind of the mentality. Like, we got to go throw the spaghetti on the wall and kind of see what happens and sticks. But a little bit more strategic aim, I imagine, than what happens at home in your kitchen.
Yeah.
I do know about your broadband initiatives, and closing the digital divide is such an important part of the conversation. We haven't really touched on that here this session at City of the Future this year, but digital inclusion is incredibly important, and NYPA is actively seeking to close those gaps. So could you speak to that project a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the most recent project that we've been tasked to work on. So, as any utility that you're aware of is building their own fiber optic network. So we have again built our network approximately 700 miles of OPGW, which is the optical ground wire. So we replace our existing shield wire, which goes on the top of the transmission line, with something that looks alike but has fiber within it. So it's dual purpose. So it still protects the transmission asset, but also has the capability for communications. We install 48 fiber strands because you can segregate the data going on each fiber strand by a lot. So you can have almost 88 terabytes of data going on each fiber strand at a time. So when the state reached out to us and said, hey, we are looking at closing the digital divide in upstate New York, is there a way to leverage your assets and to help bridge the gap? Now, NYPA, again, being a state authority, we're bound by our legislation. So we actually had to look, what is possible from our current legislation today. And we actually had to go through a legislative change last year in April to allow us to even sublease some of our, or lease some of our fiber to a municipality, another state entity, but not to a private company. So there's some limitations too, but majority of all of our customers are municipalities and co-ops, and we partner with other state entities as well. So we actually are offloading 2 fiber strands. It might not look a lot, but from an optical sense, that is carrying a lot of data. If you have everyone at 1 gig network, you can have up to anywhere between 1 to 2 million customers on those 2 fiber strands. You have a different comparison would be between the US and the Europe, there's 12 fiber strands. You have continents worth of data going on 12 fiber strands. So we embarked on this journey called the Connect All program, which the governor announced last year as part of the state of the state, is a $1.2 billion initiative in broadband addressing digital divide. And we got tasked to look at it. So we started off with a pilot project where we picked out 4 different towns in different areas, and this is, and NYPA is not in a position to bring fiber to the home either. That's not our bread and butter. There's a lot of other companies that do it, but since we were tasked, we partner with other state entities that are currently doing it. We partner with the local development corporation and our customer as well. So we picked 3 different models to test and see if we were asked to do beyond this, at least we have some lessons learned to plan for ourselves. So there are 4 projects in flight today. First one is in the village of Sherburne in Shenango County in central New York, where there are approximately 1,800 homes and businesses. Today, I think the customers are paying between $90 to $200 for DSL. In 2023, they're paying for DSL as well as Viasat, the satellite broadband, which is not reliable. Then the other towns that we had was town of Diana and Pitcairn up in northern New York region, where we actually lease fiber from another state entity as redundancy as part of our initiatives. So we partner with them because we know they have a robust network as well, and they've been providing this access to dark fiber for the past 30 years. So we partner with them to address around 400 homes and businesses in particular region that are completely unserved. They have no options today except for satellite. And then the fourth one was town of Nichols in Tioga County, closer to the Pennsylvania border, just for reference. There's 850 homes and businesses that do not have a reliable connection today. The town itself, probably around 300 folks might have spectrum, but the east and the west side of the town have nothing today. So we picked those 4 locations. It was a $10 million pilot that we're working on today. So if you take a national average of of building a fiber network, crossing a home costs you around $7,000 to $10,000. But we were able to actually work with our partners, providing the fiber at no cost to the state, lowering that cost down. We have the state and the federal funding that we're working with for these projects. So we brought the capital cost down. So now today we are passing each home around $3,000 per household. So it's a significant, shift there on how we approached to achieve these goals. The last thing I would say is we are providing service today through the ISPs, not us directly, but ISPs are providing service at $40 a month for 100 by 20, so 100 megs down, 20 megs up, which is the FCC requirement to be classified as a true broadband. So that is the base package at $40 a month, and we have all the way up to 1 gig network for $80 a month. And majority of these homes fall within disadvantaged communities, tier 1 school rating for disadvantaged communities too. So they qualify for additional $30 a month from FCC. So truly they'll be paying 10 to, was it $50 for a true 1 gig service. So imagine, all the savings in the town. So each town that we're working on has an average saving of $1 million a year.
There's just so much to unpack from all of that. I have, maybe just 2 more questions for you. I do want to leave it open at the end for just 1 or 2 questions before we get into our final session of the day. So clearly, NYPA has to have a vision ultimately for this. But I'm really curious with, all of your background and your involvement in these projects, how do you envision the utility of the future? And what does that ultimately mean?
And there's a lot of discussion in the past couple of days on the stage that we talk about vehicle to grid integration. There's a lot of about DERs. I mean, all these technologies are coming. I mean, how fast can we adapt to it? How fast can we accept those? And how fast can we make sure that when we put them on, the grid is still reliable and resilient? And I think that's what the grid of the future looks like. And one thing that we talked about yesterday, Joyce, was it's just not just putting the technologies out there, but it's also the cultural change that every resident would have to go through and accept that, hey, we are switching from what's a traditional utility to a more modern utility today, right? And there's a lot of education that needs to happen in every state. The other one that we talked about at a municipality level is load management. It's not just putting these technologies out there just because you have a 70% integration that's required by the law, but if you can manage your load at a municipality level, that would also help you get your goals faster. So that's one thing that we are currently looking at for a pilot with one of our customers through broadband project is how can we go beyond broadband and see what technologies can we actually leverage, whether it's them controlling the municipalities, the electric divisions of the municipalities controlling maybe the thermostats in the home to see if we can balance the load through there. We talked about the putting the electricity back through the car batteries. If that happens, imagine these are intermittent resources. It's something that we have to be very careful about. From a strategy standpoint, it makes sense, but ask the ISOs, ask the power engineers, it's a challenge to meet. How can we make sure the grid is reliable and resilient? That's the biggest question, and I think that's what, overall, that's what, all those technologies combined looks like the future, utility of the future, but there's still a lot of challenges and hurdles that we have to go through to get there.
Thank you. In a previous conversation, you mentioned the importance of collective action. So how is it that utilities can leverage that moving forward?
I think that was with respect to broadband when we had the conversation last time, and we're seeing that with our Connect All program, right? We are connecting and we are leveraging all the partners that we have. It's a collective action. It's not just NYPA going and pushing things out there. It's the state helping with policy, with the funding. It's the ISPs that are willing to be on the open access concept where they can compete against other providers. I think one of the distinction of New York and why the rates are so low is ISPs are not owning the assets that we are building out today. It is the municipalities, it is the local development corporations, and the state entities that will own the assets and maintain it. There's a nominal fee that they will be charged as part of the bill for maintenance, but it is so what that does is it allows any ISP to go on that network. So it drives competition, so you have a reliable network and you're driving prices down. So I think it's a collective action of everybody working together. It's not just one entity trying to do everything. So I think that's one of the key factors is the state, the ISP, which is the private sector, and also our customers are working along together side by side, trying to figure out how can we achieve the objectives of the Connect All program. And that's where the collective action is very much important. And it's not just with our customers, but also with our utility partners too. Rather than us building a network out everywhere, can we share the network? I mean, you can build enough. You can't, there's so much that you can build. You can't reach everywhere. So how can you partner with them to ensure that you are connected end to end?
Thank you very much. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left. Would love to open it up for conversations. We have someone over here in the back who raised their hand first. We are coming to you.
Hi. I was wondering, I work in for the state of Maryland, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about any advice that you would have for governments, either at the local or state government, regarding either consumer education programs or consumer protection considerations. There's a lot of really exciting opportunities regarding heat pumps or appliances, and sometimes consumers may not understand their technologies or their options. Generally, wondering if you could speak a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. I'm not going to talk about consumer protection, but from an education standpoint, talking about heat pumps, NYPA does around 200 to 300 million dollars of energy efficiency projects with New York City Housing Authority, with other state entities that do require these projects to be completed, right? So there's a level of education that needs to happen. It's not just saying, hey, here's a new technology, we change this, but how is that impacting you? One thing that we do really well within our organization is change management, but helping them understand. So if we have a unit employee turning a wrench, we make sure they understand how is that impacting their customers out using the electricity too. So it's a level of education that needs to happen. And for NYPA being in a unique position is because we're part of the state, it's easy for us to do it. We have a lot of education sessions for STEM students. We have a lot of P-Tech students come in as interns. So we do a lot out in the community, and we have a whole community relations group that are out there in every community, whether it's disadvantaged communities, whether it's our customers' locations. We are out there educating people on what are we doing today, how is the EV industry going to change the overall industry today, and the utility industry, and what are the effects of those, the impacts to them. As long as you put the context to them, I think that's when they will start grasping things, and that we have seen a big change within our New York communities too.
Thank you. We're coming to you just a second.
Oh, okay. Hi. I was very intrigued by your Agile lab, and I was wondering, is that something completely unique to your utility, or is it something, do other utilities also have similar labs for testing these scenarios? How does it compare to like the National Renewable Energy Lab? And would that be an idea also for collective action in terms of a lot of utilities working together? And maybe that'll be brought up later today at the Edison Electric Institute. I know they're a membership association for IOUs, etc.
That's a good question. So it is a collective action. We're not doing these projects. We built it so we can start using them. We started partnering on private companies, other utilities on DOE projects, so it was a partnership. And now we're actually changing our business model from just a lab to service offering. So that's the whole change. And the digital twin is part of the phase two, is what we call, where we are building the digital twin, but existing capabilities can be used. So we partner with other state entities, the NYSERDA, which is the New York State Research Institute Authority, as well as DPS. So we are working with them on any project, any technology projects that come through their desk for approval would have to be tested in the agile lab before it gets deployed out in the field. So it's a mandate. It's about a culture again that's changing within New York, and it takes time to do that. So it's a collective action. It's not just limited to us. We want this to be an independent lab that people can come and test the technologies out. We even had a partnership with EPRI where Saudi Electric Company came in and tested the technology out in our lab. So it is open. It's about partnership. There's, if you go on the website, you can sign up and see what's going on, as well as reach out if you want to test any technologies out with us.
Excellent. We have about 5 minutes left, so additional questions? Oh, we've got one in the back.
Questions on reserve. I always have them. Halabaloo's Electric Power Engineers. You spoke about load management and the challenges with it in being technical myself and working on that aspect. I'm curious where the top challenges you see, and if you have any estimates on the cost that you think it will take to make through DER and demand side management to work to balance the grid the way you would like it to.
From a cost perspective, the answer is a little hard to give out with everything that's going on the past couple of years with inflation, with supply chain issues. I mean, the numbers will definitely be skewed up for now. But looking at it from a technical standpoint, there's definitely one thing is the education piece. But I mentioned in the previous answer, education is the key important for the end users. And I think from a load management perspective at the municipality level, that's where it starts. We can start throwing technologies out at them, but until they accept the fact that the grid is evolving, and now we are in the modern times that that we have to accept that there's a change coming, that's where it starts. From a technical standpoint, one of the examples that I gave was say Nest thermostats, right? And this is just a hypothetical situation where is it possible for the municipality electric division to maybe manage the load from a heating standpoint? It's all electric heating in that region. Is it possible for them to manage the load during peak seasons to see if they lower the temperatures, they have control over it? But would you be comfortable giving access of your thermostats to anybody else? No. So I think it's a culture that it's an education that needs to happen to get to that stage. That's the biggest hurdle. I don't think, financial definitely will be a hurdle because deploying all these out in the field, municipalities are not equipped with that from a financial perspective or even from a technology perspective. So I think the education, and then it's going to take a few years for us to get to that point.
Without the utility knowing that it can count on that, it doesn't actually bring the balance benefit because the utility will still have to invest. And to me, that's the very critical part because
Yes.
we can say we can, but if the planner feels that they can't really count on it, then it doesn't matter from a reduction of peak and carbon emission reduction, all that.
Absolutely. There was one of the
Thank you.
executive orders that we had in New York is to reduce the carbon footprint in state buildings that's larger than 20,000 square feet. So we stood up, when we stood up Agile as part of Vision 2020, we also stood up what's called the New York Energy Manager. It is a digital service for our customers where we help monitor their consumptions and provide the advisory services on how they can reduce their energy usage as well as the carbon footprint within their locations too. So we started doing that. It was a successful program, but I think it's about accepting and being part of that, and participation is key, right? If you don't have the data, you can't provide any input to them. So that's one of the challenges that we had is people accepting the change and being part of the change. So we had a limited, I think we had, if I'm not wrong, over 11,000 buildings online in our system that we were help monitoring those services. Now the shift is compliance as per the new state of the state, the governor's initiative is to help with the compliance piece of, are we meeting those goals from a state energy goal perspective. So there's definitely, things change. In less than 3 years, the shift moved from predictive analytics and how can we help our customers reduce it to, okay, now we're doing compliance.
And that is time. Can we get please a big round of applause for Ali?